Okay, I'll carry on playing a bit.
Mhm.
It's quite a long video. I mean, some of it you've already covered effectively. You've already got preempted any responses, but we'll
Yeah.
play at any point, inshallah. We can various sections of them, break for comment.
I want to separate a lot of what you've said there and actually ask for some more detail. But let's start with Iran, because for some time, Iran has shown amazing or enormous restraint when it comes to Israeli activity, either with its proxies or even on its soil. So if we think back to the pager attacks, Iran left effectively Hezbollah to deal with that itself. When you think about the death of the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, um, um, Iran has shown, think about the enrichment of uranium. I mean, for decades now, for a decade, over a decade, Netanyahu has been claiming that Iran is a few weeks away from a nuclear weapon. Now, if we were to believe that, and there's nothing to say that isn't the case, that Iran does have the technology to enrich uranium to the degree that it can build a nuclear weapon. It's obviously got ballistic missile technology, so it could weaponize that nuclear weapon very quickly. But Iran has chosen not to do that. Um, it seems to me that Iran, in many ways, was did come across initially, prior to October the 7th, as a formidable power, at least a regional power. But since then, Iran has portrayed itself as a paper tiger. It's quite weak. So I suppose my question is, did yesterday's or this morning's attack indicate or consolidate this weakness in the eyes of Israel in particular, but also the Americans?
I think that the Iranians are under no illusions about where their powers lie. There's a reason why the Iranians propagated the idea of a Shia crescent that goes from Tehran through Iraq, through Syria into Lebanon. It was primarily because the Iranians were aware and remain aware that they lack the military capabilities for any head on confrontation with any power in the region, and specifically the US power and the US bases in the region in and of themselves. I think the Iranians, after the Iran-Iraq war, it demonstrated the limited capacity of Iran to be able to engage in head-on confrontation. And that's why we've seen that Iran's military exploits in the region have all been conducted via proxies, such as the establishment of militias in Iraq, which would later come together and come to form what is now known as the Hashd al-Shabi, or the Popular Mobilization Force. It used its sort of religious connection with Bashar al-Assad to find some sort of ties and then embark in a cultural push and drive to Shi'ize Damascus and the like. There were scenes that took place in Damascus under Assad that were unprecedented, including long lines of Latam, where the procession would go for Muharram to lament the death of Al-Hussein. We saw the Iranians since the Islamic Revolution in Sudan, in Tunisia, in Bosnia, wherever they lent support to the government, they would always ask in exchange for the opening of a cultural office. And through that cultural office, they would begin to spread their ideas or their version of what happened after the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in order to spread a more sectarian ideology. Ben Ali panicked when they started their missionary activities in Tunisia and quickly shut down the office. Omar al-Bashir, when he was in the president of Sudan, he shut down the Iranian office. In Bosnia, they significantly restricted the activities of this office, even though Iran was a primary or significant supporter of their resistance. The point is, Iran's military capabilities stemmed on this idea that if we can build this ideological front and then develop militias in that environment that would fight on our behalf, then we would not need to expose the Iranian army or Iranian resources on the front lines. We can use these proxies instead. And we saw them use it to full effect in the Syrian revolution when Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, who was hailed by the Sunni world as a sort of Salah ad-Din after his own war with the Israelis, threw all of that aside to cross over into Syria in an ideological capacity to give victory to his ideological allies over the Syrian people who are trying to liberate their country and trying to find some sort of freedom. The point here is, it's not that Iran became a paper tiger. Iran knew where its limitations lay. When Iran decided that to intervene for Gaza, and I believe that it didn't do so for Machiavellian reasons, And the reason being is there was no political gain for Iran in intervening for Gaza. It's on record that Hassan Nasrallah himself was very upset at the events of October 7th, believing they were ill-timed. Ismail Haniyeh, when he spoke to Tehran after October 7th, asking for support, the Iranians responded and said, well, you never asked us before you did October 7th. How can you expect us to support you? This was documented in Reuters, and it was one of the reasons why the Israelis began the ground offensive, because it got leaked that the Iranians had told the Palestinians, we're not going to give you more support. You didn't consult with us. Nevertheless, Iran deployed its proxies to frustrate the Israelis and fire missiles into northern, what they like to refer to as Israel, we refer to as occupied territories, to fire missiles that drove 60,000 settlers out of the lands that they stole from the Palestinians into inner part of what they call Israel, what we call occupied territories. The Houthis began to fire the Eilat port. The point is, Iran deployed its proxies in this regard. What Iran did not expect was that Israel would go beyond the tit for tat and utterly destroy the proxies.
But why did they not expect that? Because, this Israeli government, this Netanyahu regime is out of control. It has very few safeguards, very few guardrails to its activity in the region. Why is it that it just didn't see this come in?
I think one thing that is worth noting, I was watching an interview with Mearsheimer and some of these others.
Yeah.
There is a collective consensus amongst analysts that very few could have predicted how far the Israelis have gone.
Really?
Many people thought that this would be like what we've seen before, a few weeks or a few months of retaliation by the Israelis, and then they would settle down. There was an expectation that the Americans would not allow the Israelis to go so far, especially given that they were chasing normalization with Saudi Arabia. They were chasing some sort of rewriting for the region. Brett McGurk was talking about deprioritizing the region, going to the Chinese. I don't think anyone expected the rabid nature of the Israelis, although they were known to be rabid. No one expected them to go that far. And I think the Iranians made it clear to the Israelis that this is a tit for tat. This ends when you stop in Gaza. So you've done your operation. We won't go into Gaza itself. Just as soon as you stop, we'll go as well. I think the Israelis, when they realized that the Iranians were uncomfortable, and then they saw the Americans were not willing to restrain them, Biden in particular, I think the Israelis thought the Americans might restrain them, but they were surprised by the extent of Biden's ideological commitment to Zionism and Blinken's willingness to lend every form of diplomatic support. I think the Israelis were expecting to be reined in and were surprised by just the extent to which Biden allowed them to go. I think that the Iranians, when they thought it would be tit for tat, as the Israelis pushed into Lebanon, which Biden once said was a red line, when they realized it wasn't a red line, the Israelis said, let's just demolish Hezbollah, let's annihilate them. And then it started a domino effect that the Israelis did not predict. In demolishing Hezbollah and its capabilities and killing Hassan Nasrallah and then wiping out much of the leadership of Hezbollah, it caused the domino effect in Syria. Bashar al-Assad in Syria, the only reason he was still standing is because of the Iranian militias. Without the Iranian militias, he had no grassroots support in order to remain. Once those Iranian militias were weakened by the Israelis, suddenly the road to Damascus suddenly opened up for Ahmad al-Shara. That doesn't mean the Israelis supported Ahmad al-Shara. I don't think the Israelis anticipated the impact that Hezbollah's weakness would have in Syria. Nevertheless, a domino effect. And then Israel and Iranians were surprised by just how far the collapse started taking place. And that not only did it collapse in Lebanon, but Assad collapsed within 10 days after giving reassurances to the Iranians and the Russians that he had enough power in order to be able to stay in. I think the Israelis, in their surprise at what's happening, and the Iranian surprise, they are beginning to realize the Iranians, it's not that they're weaker than they thought. The Iranians always knew where their strength lied. But the Israelis are saying that the rapid pace of the collapse of Iranian power is something to go and take advantage of. It's not that Iran is a paper tiger. It's that Iran made one miscalculation. Iran, instead of pursuing a common narrative with Muslims in the region, Iran very aggressively pushed the sectarian narrative. Iran very aggressively pushed the flags of Al-Hussein and Fatima Zahra and revenge for those. There's often this idea that by mentioning it, you promote sectarianism. It's important to remember that the Shia Hassan Nasrallah was arguably one of the greatest heroes in the Muslim world after 2006 because of his engagement with the Israelis and because he came out of that engagement having humiliated the Israelis. His Shia belief did not stop Tunisians supporting him, did not stop Algerians lauding him, did not stop Egyptians celebrating him. The Shia was irrelevant. The Shia nature was irrelevant. The Iranians, when they went into Syria, and people started seeing videos of Iranian militias waving the flag, saying we're taking revenge for what Yazid did to Sayyidina al-Hussein. This is when people went, wait a minute, what are these flags? What is this idea that Iran is pushing? And what Iran did was it alienated large segments of the population. When ISIS emerged in Iraq, ISIS, which united the Muslim world against ISIS, ISIS emerged and both Sunni and Shia were against them. The militias that Iran built in Iraq that were allied with Iranians on a sectarian basis. I'm not saying all Shia support the Iranians. I'm saying the militias specifically that were supported by the Iranians. Instead of going to attack ISIS direct, they used ISIS as a false flag to go to Anbar and Diyala and demographically alter the populations to change Sunni demographics into Shia demographics. And they did that in Syria. What Iran did is that the flag of Palestine that it waved and the idea that it could create some sort of Muslim unity, the reality of how it implemented it in its sectarian slaughter and killing turned the Syrians against Iran. It turned Iraqis against Iran. It turned a lot of the Muslim world against Iran in such a way that as Israel bombs the Iranians, many in Syria, Saudi, and Iraq are unsure whether to celebrate or whether to condemn. Because for them, this is the tyrant. Finally, the chickens are coming home to roost for the tyrant. That's not my opinion. I'm saying as a result of how Iran built it, this is why it became a paper tiger. It wasn't a paper tiger initially. It became a paper tiger when that widespread support it once had dissipated in the blood that it spilt in order to achieve a sectarian goal instead of going beyond sectarianism and providing a unified front.
Okay, so I would ask you an ideological question here, a question about worldview.
على كل in general is good. This support Sheikh Subhi Tufayli's point of view about Khamenei, Ali Khamenei, at the beginning after the Gaza 7th October. He said the Friday after that or the Friday after, that's his first week or second week, he addressing him say, you Ali Khamenei, you are a kafir. He would also obviously extreme. But he explained that this man is not Islamist, he's a sectarian, he's this. I think he's right. He knows he's one of the Maraja of Shia, the biggest marja in Lebanon actually. A standalone marja, because the others who are not go back to him as marja, they go to Khamenei, like Inshallah. And he has a fallout with them long ago, actually, well before in the 90s. Anyway, whatever it is, and his point of view is really respect-worthy and seems to be fitting the reality. So that's that problem goes to that. But it's not a matter of paper tiger and so on. And the matter is that, and they were surprised that it's a tit for tat and so on. I don't think anybody expecting that is not the expectation or political analysis or the majority of Western analysts like Mearsheimer. I think these analyze the world from their point of view, benefit, harm, realism, and things like that. But that's not the way we look to the world. The Muslim should look at it from another point of view. This cancerous, satanic entity, Israel, must be removed. It's an existential threat for Islam and Muslim, and not only for Palestinian. If you look like that, then and you look that they are joined on the hip, as the Western people say, with America, then these are existential enemy, and you should not accept their bullying if you can. And their capability is there, but it seems to be clear that they are not valuing their own capability. They are surprised by their own capability. And that's a real problem. If you lose the trust in yourself and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your ummah, there's a major problem, a fundamentally major problem. So I think it's the capability of being bullied, that you are willing to be bullied. The willingness to be bullied is a calamity, not expectation, non-expectation. And besides, okay, they didn't expect Israel to go to extreme. The international court judges otherwise. So after the decision of the international court, will say that must stop. This is going over the red line. We should jump in with both feet. Hezbollah start, at least jump, and we jump after you. They didn't do it. If that's really the reason. No, all of this is so really, those people who say this entity really has nothing to do, it's just a sectarian entity, and the whole Palestinian issue is used by them, the same that some people say that. I don't say it 100%, but the main faction, Iran, maybe that's the case. The Arabs use the Palestinian flag for their own power and supporting their own government and shares. We use the same. Since the Arab and Muslim population proved to be dumb enough, we can use it again. That would be an extreme point of view, but their behavior invites to that. And the real motivation is mostly defending Iran by using even the Shia in Iraq. They're using them, and they are now getting alienated by many of them and getting into confrontation. So this is the politics of accepting to be bullied and accepting other people to fight in your behalf. It doesn't work there. That's not the way a good believer, a good Muslim believer do. Maybe an American can do, an European can do, because they're materialists, they are realists. It's okay, what's the problem? Britain is known to be fighting to the last French soldier, and they're now fighting to the last Ukrainian man. No problem. They'll go to hell. Who cares about that? That's their morality. That's their reference frame. But our reference frame is different. Even a sectarian reference frame does not allow that. So even the issue of sectarianism would one day be under question. Are these guys really sectarian, or using even sectarianism to play with the mind of simple-minded Shia? It seems to be that's what's going on, at least in Iraq. Like moving this hash Sha'bi back and forth. Against whom? Against Sunni, against demographic. Instead of moving against the real enemy there. Who is the real enemy? Who is the ferocious animal who can bite you and kill you anytime? Then I'd say to America. Definitely. Not the Sunni in Diyala and Ramadi. They can't bite Iran and kill it. But the United States of America can bite Iran and kill it. Yeah. So they should be moved against them. And they waste all the energy against so-called takfiri, against Daesh. Daesh is irrelevant. It's a boogeyman. Constructed party, there's even doubt that Iran is behind Daesh, infiltrating Daesh, to move them as a boogeyman to move the Shia and get the Shia on board with themselves. And this accusation is directed toward Iranian intelligence, which I don't put behind them. But these people are part of the Pahlavi wing of the ancient deep state which never dies, because the religious leadership has never cleaned this mess correctly.
This mentality of being self-serving and preservation above all else, that's permeated, and that's so commonplace. In some ways, you can almost...
No problem, but my problem with that is that the British will say clearly, we support Ukraine until they will not say openly like this. We will fight Russia with the last Ukrainian man, but that's the reality. And if someone says that, they smile mildly in a mischievous way, because that's acceptable. And the time passed, it was famous. Britain fights the German until the last French man. That's all well known. But that's for them, it's okay. That's their culture, that's their background, that's their philosophy, that's their vision of the reality. It's not for the Islamic way. So if you have this vision of reality, you have become a nationalist or such extreme sectarian, then don't present yourself to us that you are fighting for Palestine and for Islam and Muslim. Just tell us the truth. That's it. Because we have, as Muslims, we are entitled to ask the governments to tell us the truth. Because one of the worst creation in the world, Yawm al-Qiyamah, which Allah does not look at and respect or give them any grant, mercy or something, is three types. The top one is Malikun Kadab. Malik meaning power. One in power who you can call him a Malik, become him a ruler or something. Who lies? Because he has no reason to lie. You have the power. So tell us the truth. And secondly, an old man who is still fornicating and committing adultery. You are old now, khalas. Young men, we understand. Hormones are running wild in their blood, but you are an old man. You're barely able to do anything, and you're still committing zina and fornication and attending to the island of Jeffrey Epstein. Shame on you. And the third one, despicable one, is someone who is dependent on others, who is poor, who needs to support someone else to support him, and he's arrogant and looking down on people. There's no reason for you if you would have been supporting yourself and earning money and self-made man, then we may understand that you are arrogant or just big haram anyway. But now you are such a low person and still you are arrogant. That's outrageous. So all these three outrageous things. So we are entitled. Let us either will tell us what is his policy. But lying to the people and deceiving them, it cannot be accepted from anything who claim to be belonging, especially as a word to Islam and so on. This is the munafiq. This is nifaq. This is nifaq. It's not acceptable. Someone in the leadership position. So this is the problem. We are now at loss. We don't know what's these Iranians all about. When Badr can say we still the door of diplomacy is not closed 100%. Is he trying to use taqiyya, thinking he can delay any Israeli attack, American attack? Say you are stupid. The Israelis know you very well what you are doing. They have actually spy even in the highest instances, and they know if you have started to do nuclear weapons. They know that. They know very well. They knew even where the National Security Council was meeting, and they bombed the place, but there was another exit. And Badr Khan got injured in his foot. But the news came recently, yesterday or the day before yesterday. Miraculously, nobody was hurt, except small injuries. Badr Khan got hurt in his foot. So bombing the entrance did not finish them. Because luckily that place had other emergency exits unknown to the Israelis. So they bombed the non-exit. And that should not be known to anybody except a spy in the highest places. Hopefully they will find the spy and get him. So they know plenty about you. You can't fool them with that. Or you are expressing your point of view, meaning you have a problem in your mind. You are seriously, at least politically, mentally retarded. After such a ferocious war, which almost annihilated the country, not only removed the regime, annihilated the country, because they will not be satisfied just to topple the regime. No. They want to split that big country into several entities. Faris, about half. Instead of 90 million, you have 40 million. That's a big gain. 90 to 40 is a huge difference. If you are 40, you're unlikely to be a world power. If you exceed over 70, 80, you may become a world power. Maybe not a superpower, but a world power, like Britain and France. We are only 60, 70. So they split that. And then they have the Adari having their own country, the Kurdish having their own country, the Arab having their Ahwaz country, and the Baluch have and the Sistan having their own country, and Afghani their own country, at least. If not even in the northeast, Khorasan can split and speak the old Persian language called Dari, like Tajikistan. And the Rum state remaining, which may be regional power of importance, but nothing more than that. And obviously, after such a split, you go for decades, maybe half a century in problems that you think settled one way or another. So that's what they're intending. And they will do if they can. Unless someone there wake up to the reality of the world and take the initiative. But I'm strongly doubting that they can do that. Hezbollah may be able to do that, provided they regarded, okay, Iran has forsaken us, they have betrayed us. Now we should, because, for example, today, I think it's today or it was yesterday, and the Lebanese state issued a decree that all banks, government, money change, etc., should not deal with unlicensed organization. I mentioned specifically Hezbollah, Hussein, or something like that, because they don't have a license. It's clearly they want to squeeze them financially, because these guys don't have a license, because they transfer things and do laundering, things like that, necessarily. So they're trying to cut the finances now, becoming audacious. Now, you have to make a decision now, what you do. You have to do something about that. Otherwise, the knife will cut your head. If the knife is near your neck, you have to push it away. There's no other option. Unless you are willing to be slaughtered, that's something else. then why did you establish yourself as a fighting organization in the first place? Fighting organization is usually established, meaning that you don't want to be slaughtered without resistance. That's it. Now it's clear the knife is coming closer to the head. Because money, finances, as the main nerve of this life. If they cut this, they are finished. It's more important than blocking the way of getting weapons. Because your money, you may be able to buy machines and so on, and then remodel them and produce your own weapons if you want, like the people in Gaza are doing. But you have to have money to get supplies and so on. Ultimately, because not everything is available for you in your domain, so you have to buy from elsewhere. Even non-military items that with dual use and so on. So money is more essential than weapons, honestly. So the Lebanese government is moving now in a dangerous way. All because they was terrified by the American. Look, don't. No. We will. Show us what you do. Everyone was terrified. Even some people, Hezbollah said, we have taken the position so we can spare Lebanon from attack. Lebanon would be attacked anyway. It's being now attacked continuously. We would spare nobody. We just invite more attacks. That's it. Very unfortunate, but that's the situation. It's a matter of belief and a fundamental attitude. That's it. Rather than all these details of real politics and others, that all has its place, but it's secondary. You have to get the primary base, the foundation first right, and then you can build. You can afford it. If the foundation is having cracks, then you cannot build anything. It will collapse anyway. The top levels can be built as good as you like, but nothing is supporting them below. Everything will go. That's what has happened. You see that? You see that?
It's quite a long video. We can go through some more. We can probably do this in several parts because there's some areas.
Is there anything similar, or make it a second part another time?
We can. I mean, the areas we're going to be discussing next will be Iran's maneuvering, Syria, beyond sectarianism, uniting beyond sectarianism.
Syria and Iraq is gone. Iran is they should survive in their own borders, and they will not survive with this attitude. That's my comment generally. With this attitude, they will not survive. The only way they survive, they should jump in with both feet, getting any good opportunity and strike without warning. This is not tolerable. For example, an attack against Hezbollah, a massive attack happens, that's intolerable, and they jump in. Jump in with a barrage of 50, 100, 57. Demolishing a site completely.
The problem with this, obviously, again, because people...
nothing will happen. They will end victorious.
No, it's not that. It's not so much that. It's the fact that the version the people have because of what Hezbollah did against Syria, then it's...
Don't forget about Syria. How Syria is gone. Forget Syria. Syria is now in a civil war-like situation. The Druze are clearly on the Israeli side, and the Israeli are bombing now the HTS forces, and even they're threatening. They already bombed the Minister of Defense, just a gate, and they are threatening. They said clearly, what's his name? So and so Katz. What's his first name? I don't remember. The Minister of Defense of Israel. He said, if Jolani does not restrain his dogs, or LCB, he did not the dogs, then we are going to we will start doing assassination inside Syria. Clearly, meaning we will assassinate you and your guys. That's it. Although he most likely knows that these guys who are fighting now in Sweden and so on are not listening to Jolani's advice. There's a rebellion ongoing. There are cracks in the structure, which is inevitable. I would say, let things develop in Syria. All what Iran can do is just abstain. Don't open your mouth. Just shut your mouth and stop plotting and working with anybody. Just leave it. Leave it. Just focus on your own affair. if any advice can be here, which I said long ago, I remember before the pandemic, I was in Nabat station and we discussed the issue of nuclear weapons. We say for Iran, having nuclear weapons is a matter of life and death. It's a major mistake not to have. Say, no, there's a fatwa. Say, this fatwa is rubbish. Say, this fatwa, don't tell me this is a rubbish fatwa. The fatwa is based on that using nuclear weapons and so on is destructive for the environment. Nobody say use them. It is used as deterrence. If you use against you, you use against them. That's it. First use is definitely haram. No, we're not discussing that. And that episode found a massive acceptance inside Iran. So first thing, get now a weapon now. And should be feasible. It should be feasible in few days. It doesn't take except few days. Complete the enrichment, and the mechanism is easy. Maybe have a mechanism already from Pakistan, or they can take it from North Korea. It's almost trivial. Trust me. You don't need to worry. So in some respect, and then as I say, they can do it in 5 days. Yeah. If you have the enrichment, you can do it. Especially you have reached 60, it's just one cycle now you to get to 90, 95. Game over. That's it. Just the mechanism around. Putting it in the missile, say on the missile, it's easy to put in the missile. People exaggerate these things. All what you need to have considerable security that it's sharpened only in the later phase of the flight. That's it. And there are plenty of security ways and means and so on. And system. Usually it have 6, 7 layers of security. You shoot the missile, and after the missile has departed, no explosion and so on, in the way, certainly on the way, then the first stage is released. And you give the code, and you give the code already before that, or you enter it manually in the missile. Then the code is activated, and so on, then it goes. And then maybe a headquarter activate the next stage, and so on. And the last stages will be activated in the downfall. So even if any mishap happens, it happens in the target area of the enemy. That's it. And you are not going to use it unless they use it. They know you have it, then they will not do the Samson option. Because they have alternative. Either Samson option, okay, we destroy some Iran city, but Israel will be gone. Or we board some ships and then go back where we have come from. That's easier. They will choose that. Trust me, the Jews will not go to Samson option. If they know they will be here, the counter action will be annihilating them completely. They'll prefer, just board some ships and go, leave. Assalamu alaikum. That's it. That's all what you need. People make it complicated. It's not complicated. You make it only complicated as you imagine it's complicated. If you have that, then you can do the first strike. As I said, in that case, since you have nuclear weapons, you can go even to the full annihilation of the facilities with conventional weapons. Until Israel, listen, I will stop, give you 3 months to package and go. Bye-bye. Salam. And forget about your 300 or 200 nuclear. They will do nothing. You will
read some. I'm going to read some of the notes I took from the videos, because I'm thinking of maybe skipping right towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
So just some things. If there's anything that strikes your fancy. So there was discussion around Trump and restraining Israel. And how Israel was...
It's very difficult. So who is restraining whom, how they are joined on the hip, as Mersham say, and so on. It's very difficult. It's a dialectic. The best is description is the dialectic relation. Originally, the Israeli lobby penetrated, and the first real action which showed that they are deep penetrating is a mix of action controlled mostly by the MI6, but also by the Israelis to get rid of Kennedy. Mostly because of the issue of nuclear material, nuclear weapons, and Khamenei. But it was not the only issue, by the way. That's not only the issue. Why? Because already the Israelis had nuclear material, nuclear technology with the French. They were participating in the nuclear explosion and testing of the French in the Algerian desert already. So they didn't need the American. But the American, they can get cheap material and smuggle it and get it easy. And Kennedy was obviously blocking that, or about to block. But the main thing for the Israelis which at that time they were still a tool of the oligarchy of Britain. Yeah, the main thing was that Kennedy was looking for. He refused any suggestion to use nuclear weapons against Russia and so on and settle the issue. So he was looking, the only way to get out of that situation is to have a dividing of the world and influence zone with the Russian. And that's the reason he said to Khrushchev, I remove the middle-range nuclear tipped missiles from Turkey, and you remove the one in Cuba. And Cuba is safe. We'll never invade Cuba. That's the agreement. I don't know if it's a writing or a gentleman agreement, but it's well known. That's what is agreed. At least semi-written protocols. That means they divide the world between them. That's the British do not like that. I think that's the main reason for assassination. And then in that also they told the Israelis he will not give. He will insist that you sign the NPT and so on and so on. And they were able to get both Jewish mafia. What's the name of the state man in New York? I don't remember his name now. He's a mafiosi, but of the Jewish, not of Italian, huh?
Yeah, I remember the name.
This is famous. It's famous. He owns tons, billions of real estate in New York. This guy is a Jew, and the CIA guys who are connected to the Jews. So they played all of that. But I would say that's mostly for the British interest than for the Israelis. Because the nuclear issue was number two, not number one. Number one is the dividing of the world between the Soviet Union and America, while Britain will be kicked in the butt. And the British do not accept that. So that's their plot. And since then, they grow in the hip, penetrated each other more and more. And you have also, obviously, all kinds of intimidating photos. It's not Epstein, the first one. That's just recent. They started that long ago. They have all kinds of
Israel's. I mean, even that
connection to mafia, prostitution, drugs. What else? Money making through gambling and all of that, and the control of the mafia, which is partly Israeli and partly Italian. The Italian mafia is about for money. They have no ideology really, but they will cooperate with the Israeli or the Jewish mafia plus the CIA. And then they can have intimidating photos for you in a certain position. That started in the 50s already.
They even like it.
The only one who is clean, maybe the last clean one who has nothing of that is maybe Eisenhower. All the other ones are stained. Even Kennedy himself has so many scandals.
Marilyn
Monroe and so on. He's a womanizer. But at least normal things, not underage, not boys and so on. Classical ones. So he could survive that. But others have even worse things, and maybe involved in murder, in racketeering, and very miserable crimes. I think Johnson is involved in something like that because otherwise he did not do anything about attacking against the Liberty, the American spy ship Liberty. So he attacked it with impunity. Then he ordered, don't do anything, leave it and cover up the whole thing. They must have something intimidating against him.
Unless there's some kind of, could it possibly be some kind of orchestration? Because obviously the wider picture is that Israel has to continue and it needs to have
that the ship was spying really. The American military was spying on Israel. And Israel was acting completely independently at the time. Israel did not have even one shot from America. And the world power like America will not allow that things like that of importance in such an area happen without them having anything to say. So they were at least spying and intercepting the communication. They say, okay, we'll show you. And they bombed them mercilessly. By order and permission and plan of the British, naturally. They don't dare themselves doing that. And the MI6 and the agent there and the oligarchy in America is doing the rest, intercepting everything. So the bombing is gone, and their men in America were working in high speed. That's, I guess, behind the scene. So when Johnson was reported that to him, or he got the report, because they had to ask him, Israel is sinking our ship, and the plane started. The aircraft carrier sent airplanes to help the ship and attack the Israeli planes. They got an order, scale back, stand down, go back. From the president himself, meaning the things are synchronized on the minute by minute.
Just moving ahead, so some other things, if there's any comment, I won't play it, but so he discusses about the 29-minute mark, disagreements between Trump and Israel, and indications of this was, the ceasefire being broken to the exclusion of, was it Witkoff, or was it discussing directly with Hamas for the ceasefire, and the Houthi ceasefire is another one that happened independent of Israel. So that's
because the Houthi are not ready to not accept to be bullied, and actually what we know now from all the information is that Trump contacted the American contacted the Oman, say ask the Houthi if we stop, will they stop if we stop, and the Houthi answered, yeah, we have nothing to do that. You care? We did not ask you to come. You care? Just get lost. But against Israel will continue as before. And they continued exactly as before. Simple, straightforward. And Trump said, they begged for a ceasefire and so on. And the Houthi just smiled. He can say whatever he wants. We don't care. Just let him get lost.
Let's skip ahead to the 1 hour mark. There's discussion on Muslim rulers and a shift in tone with the Saudis. This is something that something definitely in your wheelhouse.
How it's within the gift of these Muslim rulers to dent, if not stop, this genocide. And the Muslim rulers are not using their political leverage to call for an end to this genocide in Gaza. In fact, they've got more parochial nationalistic interests that they're worried about. In your answer there, you talked about Saudi Arabia in particular. But there has been a shift in tone, at least, of the Saudis, it seems. The Saudis today, for example, condemned as aggression the attack on Iran. The Saudis have taken the Abraham Accords off the table. I mean, I think a few months ago, we were talking about how it was very likely that normalization would be signed very soon between the Saudis and Israel. So something has shifted and changed. There is a little bit more, they're more upfront in condemning the Israelis today than they were maybe even 2 or 3 months back. The dua in the Haramain is now given for the people of Gaza. So there has been a shift. What more would you expect the Saudis to do?
I don't think there's been necessarily a change in the Saudi position. The dynamics remain the same. Saudi airspace remains open for Israeli airlines. Israeli delegations are visiting Saudi Arabia. We've seen Israeli journalists, YouTubers visiting Medina al-Munawwara. Bin Salman's $2 billion plus investment in Israel via Jared Kushner's investment fund continues to flow through the Israeli economy. In other words, as far as the de facto push towards normalization has taken place, none of that has been reversed. Bahrain has not reversed normalization with the Israelis, suggesting the Saudis have not demanded it of the Bahrainis, given that Bahrain was kicked into normalization as a deposit by the Saudis when they said they couldn't normalize themselves because of backlash, but they were willing to show goodwill by forcing Bahrain to normalize. I think the statements made by Saudi Arabia is more about trying to maintain the balance between an angry public opinion over genocide with the actual position of the Saudis, in which they have not made Palestine a priority. And there's a reason why they haven't made Palestine a priority. It's because the Saudis are concerned about the implications of a ceasefire domestically. The Saudis are concerned that, given that there is a widespread view that the Saudis have betrayed the Palestinians and that they were complicit in the genocide that took place, there is a concern that in a region that has seen a regime in Damascus fall to an armed group that persisted over the years and then managed to take power, there's a concern in Saudi Arabia that a ceasefire that is presented as a Palestinian victory against Israeli aggression might inspire populations across the Arab world to begin to turn on their own regimes and believe that even if the world is against you, you can still defeat it with the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The concern in Saudi is that if the ceasefire is presented as an abandoned group of Palestinians having weathered the genocidal storm of an apartheid occupying power and colonial power, then people will say that even if you don't have the support of regimes and the like, you can still stand on your feet, because Israel didn't annex Gaza, it didn't take Gaza, it wasn't able to occupy more territory, and it was frustrated despite 2 months of bombardment and being supported by the Americans and the Europeans. The Saudis need a ceasefire by which the Palestinians are a defeated party that are shown mercy in a ceasefire by the intervention of Arab nations that stepped in and managed to negotiate the ceasefire on behalf of a nation that is to be pitied, that nation that is Palestine. Because what the Saudis fear is that in Saudi Arabia itself, a ceasefire where the Palestinians are deemed to be victorious, in spite of Saudi's complicity, will result in unrest within Saudi Arabia itself. There is a concern in the region that Egypt and Jordan in particular, the regimes are particularly fragile. And if any of these regimes fall, it will result in a domino effect. In other words, something similar to perhaps to an Arab Spring version 2, which is the narrative that the Israelis are trying to push as well. Yair Lapid of the centrists, if there's such a thing exists in Israel, is saying that our actions in Gaza are jeopardizing the security of Egypt and Jordan. These are our allies. We should be careful about preserving these regimes and not putting them in a position whereby their people might turn against them and topple these regimes that are, in essence, our allies.
So just of interest, you've said many on many of the Palestine updates.
I think that's fair enough, but actually is not that with the ceasefire with the Palestinians defeated. They will not be able to achieve that if they think they are dreaming. No, originally they wanted the Hamas to be eliminated, the Palestinians to be annihilated, so they have the Palestinian issue off the table forever. And they hoped for that. And then when things turned into a genocide and the International Court made its preliminary judgment and so on, they were then really in a squeeze. They were in a problem. But I think the main problem until now for them is not only Gaza, whatever kind of ceasefire happens there, even if a ceasefire looks like a defeat, nobody will regard that as a defeat, because that the ceasefire was forced, even with miserable conditions, is still a victory for the Palestinians, because neither the Israelis succeeded in eliminating them nor kicking them out of the border. So Israel failed, whatever it is, even if the conditions are miserable. The problem is that in the Arab Peninsula, there is a country which people in the past regarded as relatively backward, that's Yemen, with the little oil and all of these things, is now become a dominant one which can enforce in everyone what they want, and they're able to defeat armadas of world powers. And this is really the essential danger. And they are watching carefully, waiting for Saudi Arabia to make a mistake, so they hammer the Saudis. They have good reason and very good reason to take revenge, and justified and legitimate revenge. And also they recognize that they missed the opportunity in time past. I met with them in 2019. I was in Geneva for this human rights meeting of the United Nations, and they have interview with them. I told them what you are doing until now is fine, but you are making a major mistake by now engaged in skirmish with the Saudi and mercenary forces in Ma'rib, which is near the border of Saudi Arabia and Wadi al-Dawasir. The correct way is that you go deep inside Asir toward Abha and Khamis Mshet, liberate these areas, have a conference in Abha, hand them over to the tribes there and the tribal chieftains and the personalities and the well-respected mashayikh, and then continue from the back of the forces in Ma'rib, force them either to surrender or annihilate them. This way you'll win the war and destabilize the Saudi regime. They did not do that, most likely because I'm almost certain it's on the bad advice of the Iran. If you do that, America will still come and will occupy the Arab Peninsula, and we have America here. It's all nonsense. It's again, the tendency of the Iranian to accept to be bullied and to be afraid from boogeyman which do not exist, just in their imagination. So now they have learned. I have a discussion with them recently, in the recent few months, told them don't make the same mistake. Just wait for any opportunity and do exactly that. Some said we will take Asir because it's regarded as a Yemeni area. All the Yemeni tribes said this will be a mistake now internationally. Don't take it. Hand it to the people, let them they have their own government. Unification will happen in due course, inshallah. The moment now to say these areas have been occupied by Al Saud illegitimately, they are now free, they manage themselves. And we finish these forces which are on the border sitting there. They have no business staying here. They should surrender or get destroyed. We give them this option. And I think it will happen. But just let the Saudi make a mistake. But they are meticulously avoiding any mistake at the moment. Very meticulously. That they condemn the attack because the moment the attack went overboard and it did not succeed, and so they attacked Al Adid and caused considerable damage. Americans claim there's no damage, but we know now from satellite photos that the main radar in Al Adid and communication center is completely smashed. Completely. So the base is not active as an air defense base or as air control base. As well. This is catastrophic. So they noticed that and say, "Oh, this is a hot business. If we enter there, we may get banned. So let us condemn it at least." But before that, they were ready to join the American if necessary. But the Americans were unable. They can't. And whatever the Americans achieved and the Israelis, because there were mistakes and the main negligence of the Iranian. That's it. They should not have achieved that what they have achieved.
Okay, other points of the video talks about the UAE and how UAE's plan is really about all these plans with normalization with Israel is to get a backdoor into the American channels. This is the perspective that he put. What are your thoughts in terms of the UAE? Obviously, UAE is racing ahead in nifaq in every capacity. Do you see that this is for them to kind of get greater leverage over America, having a
maybe they think that, but they will never get a greater leverage. Many people, politicians and so on in the Arab world, they said we have to take example from Zion, how the Zionists penetrated America and have a lobby and so on. But they neglect that ideologically there's a fundamental difference. Yes, maybe usually Christians should be not loving the Jews because they are the killer of Christ and so on, but they regard Christ the same as Jew. And the Jewish scripture are regarded for them as also scripture, as revelation and inspired and so on. So despite that hostility for excluding Christ, they still belong to the same general stream of revelation and general stream of culture. Islam is the enemy. Is a contradiction. So if you want to gain standing deep in America, you have to leave Islam to become Christian, to become Buddhist or something else. If you want to gain. But how to do that? Even if you do that, you are still an Arab. Just being race and Arab, then you are not from the chosen people. You are from the enemy. That's a problem. That's a problem. So they imagine that. They imagine that lobbying and spending money is all what's that. No, there's something deeper than that. It's not only spending money. Money is important. Not only having incriminating photos. It's important. That's not all. It's a combination of all of these.
And also, ultimately, it's obviously a lust of power, but ultimately what drives him is literally just protecting the throne. That's
that's it. All the regimes in the area, with no exception, except maybe Afghani and maybe the current Bangladeshi and so on, maybe the Iranian to a part, at least in the revolutionary wing, they are all about just protecting the throne. The Iranian may be protecting Iran, not the throne, just Iran as a country or something like that. Maybe. So it's a little bit wider than just selfish interest as a ruler. And the rest are just keeping the power for themselves. The military in Egypt are just a feudal, military feudalism. In Pakistan, it is a mafia in a government form. Essentially, it's a mafia. It's not a government. It looks like a government, but it's a mafia in a government form.
Just wrapping up a little bit more. There's a section where he talks about what Muslim countries can do, and he makes a point about even small gestures would be, and he gives the example of King Faisal threatening the oil embargo.
This is all fake. Many people still believe that. That's all fake. There was no oil embargo, nothing.
But ultimately, even not a direct military confrontation, even smaller things could derail things for the Zionist project. He also talks about, there's a section around capability and activism. and the impact of the. I'm only summarizing just to save the listener. Definitely.
Well, saying the oil embargo, I tell you what the oil embargo. The oil embargo is a plot to the British companies, be British Petroleum and Shell and so on. These are the British and Holland controlled. British and Holland are the cousins anyway. So that they can undermine the American companies and gain control of the oil market. And Saudi Arabia, Faisal was the man of the oligarchy and the British, and they played that game. But also to avoid any really, because the Americans were very upset that Vietnam War was hot and ongoing and they needed oil. And say, okay, we'll make exception. Oil going to the American war effort in Vietnam will go. And it was going. Oh, this is a joke. But they can announce that and drum it and so on. And everyone has to drum the drum. What to expect journalists and so on, paid journalists in the Arab world to do. And in the West, they have that usual shallow analysis. They will never go saying that this is an infight inside the West. The West is forming like a block, like God's chosen people, the West against the Soviet Union. It's not true. It's not true. This is the shallow things they're selling to the common public. We are in the West against the communists and the atheists and so on, the atheists, the godless communists and so on. No, that's not.
There's also a section where he talks about
they fooled their own people, and they have fooled many people this way. There was no real oil embargo. At the same time, actually, I think before, a little bit before, or slightly after, around, I don't remember which one before, in the same time, they made the deal with Nixon, okay, oil will be sold only with dollars. And this way, the dollar became the state. Initially, it was covered by gold. So by its own strength was the world reserve currency. Now, Nixon disconnected it from the gold. So it is about to collapse if it, and then the only way to make it is that the people need dollars to buy oil, and oil was the biggest commodity and most important at that time in that way. And that was done. Nobody dares pay for oil in British pounds, or at that time there was no euro, British pound, Swiss franc, Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar. No, nobody. It's not acceptable except oil, American US dollars. Maybe in these negotiations they were ahead or after. I think they were ahead. They were before. I think you can check when was the dollar disconnected from gold. I think it's before the oil embargo. And they maybe agreed, listen, we may need, because of this situation in Egypt and Israel, we may need to play a game. So give us a green light. So no problem. Do an embargo. Play the game. Nixon is cunning enough in that. Nixon is very sharp, by the way. One of the most cunning and sneaky American presidents. It's not like Johnson, the cowboy, or Kennedy, who is more like, Kennedy is more like, yes, he has women's stories and so on. He can control his sexual desire, that's all. But otherwise, he's more or less like a Catholic with some bit of morality and human rights. But Nixon is a master of deceit. Master of deceit. He's the one who started the relation with India, with China, with the calculation that if I can get China to my side and benefit from the schism which is happening, the confrontation between China and Russia, because Russia was not very happy with the Chinese trying to be the leader intellectually and ideologically, and also they could not overcome the European racism against the yellow race, unfortunately. So he thought, if I build bridge with China and I can increase the conflict, then these two major powers will be fighting against each other and I will be enjoying. I will have victory without war. And he almost succeeded. He almost succeeded. If the Soviet Union did not fall, he would have succeeded. Because the leadership in Moscow, they cannot overcome this racism and this the European, even if they are just Slavish, East European, they will never relinquish leadership to China as a communist, matter of ideology. There's no way these flat-nosed yellow guys would be the leader ever. And they were objecting to the China having nuclear weapons. Even there's a rumor, I think it's just maybe spread by the Americans, by the cunning Nixon, that they offered to Nixon. What's about we join hands and destroy the nuclear program of China? And Nixon rejected. I think it's just a story invented by Nixon himself and leaked somehow so that the Chinese thinks Russia is really an enemy of us. I don't think that the Russian will be so stupid. I don't think so. But who knows? At the time, Brezhnev is such a dum-dum. He may do that. That they will tell the American, listen, the nuclear program of China is dangerous. It will destabilize the situation. It's enough that both of us have nuclear weapons. That's enough to balance the world. So let us attack the nuclear program of China, which can be attacked at that time. It was in the beginning. And Nixon said, no. Nuclear powers we cannot attack. We have the NPT and so on. If China does not sign, then we have to do all diplomacy to force them to sign one day. That's it. I don't think it happened like that. I think it's the cunning Nixon spreading that rumor.
So there's obviously I'm not going to play this section because it's just to save time. What can Muslim countries do? What would your analysis be in terms of in this current situation?
Nothing. All the Muslim can do is topple their own government. That's the way to go. That's it. Make it short. Don't waste your time.
Yeah. No, Muslim countries, in terms of obviously the sincere leadership, there's a million things they can
What
do.
is the sincerity? Show me which one you mean.
Yeah.
Afghanistan is barely standing on its own feet and they're barely developing themselves. Besides, they are frozen on the madhab Hanafi and with the obsession of ikhtilat and free mixing and so on, that's taking all their mindset. They're still living in the dark ages. They have to come in the 21st century and apply Islam to 21st century. They have to advance toward Islam. They think they are going back to Islam. No, if you have to advance because you have lit Islam behind you. You have to turn and go back to it. But that's what I think. That's all. Indonesia, maybe there's a reasonable view, but there's a huge country and still in industrialization and so on. And then they think they are sufficiently intellectually sophisticated, the leadership at least. There have been some parties in time past, but they got extinct under Sukarno and Suharto in the struggle between communism and capitalism and so on. Until now, the people did not get themselves really sorted out properly.
There's a section where he evaluates the impact of the Dawah in the USA, the Dawah in terms of the Palestine activism. So for the listeners, it's worth listening to. I mean, we're probably not going to go through the video because some of it is quite self-explanatory. I'd like to end on this bit, which is overcoming fear. So if you've got anything to add, let's have a listen.
We talked about the Muslim rulers and we talked about the Arab populations and the Muslim populations, and we talked about our own culpability as Muslims. And in that last answer, you talked about capability. But I find that a lot of us still remain fearful of the outcomes. They're fearful of our activities, fearful of our jobs, our employment, fearful when it comes to speaking up for Palestine. And fear is a natural disposition that all human beings have. How do we overcome this fear?
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. In Surah Yusuf, he says, indeed in this book we tell you the best of stories that prior to which you were ignorant of. And the reason Allah tells you these stories is because these stories are meant to be parallels of today, that you see yourself in that story. The same emotions that the prophets had, you see your emotions reflected in that. And the point of these stories is that whatever stage you are in life, Allah is giving you an indication what the ending will be before the ending even comes. When the Prophet Muhammad first receives the wahi from Jibreel, what's the first emotion that he feels? Fear. What does he do after he receives the command and the message to move, to call, to raise the call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to go and transform society, to stand up for what's right, to stand up for what's just, to challenge the oppressive society, not to hide, to challenge the oppressive society. What's his first reaction, Jalal? Is it some sort of bravery where he says, I'm going to do it? No, he goes back to Khadija. He runs from Hira. He goes to Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, puts his head in her lap, and he tells her that I am fearful, I am scared. And she reassures him and says, Allah has never humiliated you. You are a good man. Allah will give you everything that you need. Allah will never embarrass you. or humiliate you. The point is that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also felt scared. When Musa ﷺ talks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that burning bush, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him to go to Pharaoh, gives him two signs and tells him, go to Pharaoh, إِنَّهُ طَغَى. Musa alayhi salam says, رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُوا قَوْلِي. Allahumma, I have a stutter in my tongue. Allahumma, do the stutter and send with me Harun. Why send with me Harun? In one ayah, هو أفصح مني لسانا. He is more eloquent than I am. But the indication is, Allahumma, I don't want to go alone. Allahumma, I'm scared to go alone. Allahumma, I'm scared to talk to Pharaoh alone. In another verse, Harun and Musa alayhi salam said, رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا نَخَافَ أَن يَفْرُطْ عَلَيْنَا وَيَطْغَى. In Surah Taha, Allahumma, we're both scared to go to Pharaoh because he might do horrible things to us. When Allah reassures them again, Musa is facing the sorcerers. Again, فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةَ Musa. Musa alayhi salam felt fear in his heart. And Allah reminds him again, don't be scared, just go. The point is, the road to that which is just, the road that the prophets took, the prophetic road of standing up for what's right, is one that people go feeling fear. There's nothing that indicates lack of iman in feeling the fear. The point of these stories is, what did these prophets do with that fear? When Ja'far ibn Abi Talib goes to Najashi, Najashi listens to Amr ibn As without listening to Ja'far, and immediately puts the chains on the feet of the Muslims and says, I'm going to send you back to Quraysh for you to be persecuted. Ja'far, in a panic, exclaims, we came to you, we came to America, we came to Najashi, where there is a freedom of speech, where our Prophet said no man is wrong. The Muslims went to the Christian king. The Muslim went to speak to the fitrah of the Christian king. The Muslim went to speak to the fitrah of the Christian society, to say to them, hear what we have to say. We're not too different from you. If you hear what we say, you will find it resonates with you. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib says, in the midst of a hostile environment, where you have the Abyssinians staring down at them, ready to deport them back to Quraysh. And he says, we worship gods of wood and stone, elements of our own manufacture. The rich neglect the poor, and the act by which a brother lifts his fellow brother up is described by them as upsetting social order. To this inhumanity a prophet has come, and why should we be surprised? Did not God send Moses and Jesus and the like? And suddenly Najashi, when he hears the rhetoric of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, when he hears the resonance of the message, he points and says, the difference between us and you is no thicker than this line. Fear at the start, victory at the end. When Mus'ab ibn Umair goes to Yathrib, he's fearful that maybe the tribes might kill him. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh takes the spear to go to him and say, what treacherous ideas are you spreading? If you don't convince me, I will kill you. We're talking a life and death situation. Mus'ab says to him, hear what I have to say. Maybe you might like it. The rednecks of the people in Yathrib turn around and say, we don't give you a chance. Either you tell us what your message is. If we don't like it, we will kill you. When he explains it to Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, the initial fear ends up in victory, and Sa'd ibn Mu'adh brings the whole city to their favor. When Amr ibn As radiallahu anh goes up against the Romans and he writes a letter to Umar al-Khattab, I don't think I will be able to defeat them. I think I lack the resources, and their general is a mighty general of Rome. And Umar al-Khattab writes back, they may have so and so of Rome, but we have Amr ibn al-As of the Muslims. Go, and he sends him some reinforcements. Amr ibn As is fearful but ends up with victory in Egypt. Fear is not something that paralyzes you. Allah says there's nothing wrong with having the fear, but rather what you do with that fear. How do you move with that fear? You may fear going to a protest, but when you go, you see the protest works. You fear doing a boycott, and then you see the impact the boycott has. I remember getting a message. There was somebody who said, I was too scared to go even to work to talk about Palestine. And then I walked in one day, I said, guys, it's not what you think it is. Can we have just like one day where we can just talk about some of the history? And then we did. We brought a speaker, we talked, and now it seems it's diffused in the office place. The person was scared to even talk about it, but found that the fear was unfounded. She found that the environment shifted in her favor. When the people went to they were fearful that the other side had 1,000 men while they had 313 ill-equipped people to fight against those in Quraysh. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased them in their iman, and they were able to win that battle. That fear ended up a victory. The point is that fear is not a stumbling block. It's okay to be fearful. It's okay to have that fear moving forward. But there is also something else that is worth mentioning here, which is that there is the fear that paralyzes, and there is the fear that you conquer as you move forward. In Bosnia, when we went last year, we went to the Srebrenica Memorial twice in 2 weeks. On the second time, Almir Pajevic is next to us.
I'm just going to skip ahead a bit. He talks about Bosnia, where
Oh, it's what he said is enough. I think it's how to overcome the fear and just make yourself resistant to bullying. For example, I remember when they made that law first time with and do something glorifying terrorism,
Mhm.
and there was a discussion. I think that was maybe in a BBC room or something. That's in the late 90s, I think, not or early this. I think it's late 90s, and it was with George Galloway. That and they said the law is about to enact it. It contain glorifying terrorism and so praising Hamas and the Hamas is a terrorist organization. They claim that's on. And then myself and Joe said, okay, we praise Hamas. We believe they are mujahideen and they're freedom fighter. And okay, we'll wait, inshallah, for the police to come to detain us according to the law of glorifying terrorism. And no police came until the state. So just ignore it. And then we'll see how we discuss that in court. We'll see. The matter will become a public matter in discussion in court. It will turn into a political discussion because the whole thing with verification of terrorism and terrorism, all of these are ill-defined terms. They will not stand in scrutiny, any real scrutiny, but relying on the intimidation that you may have a headache, you may lose job, and so on. That's what they believe. Intimidation and terrifying. That's it. You have to overcome that. You have to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then yourself with capability to confront.
Ultimately, having certainty in our own ideology.
Yeah, that's
certainty that Allah will support us, and if He doesn't give us victory in this life, the next life, which is the more important one.
And ultimately, تدبر القرآن. تدبر القرآن أم على قلوب أقفال. If you don't do تدبر القرآن, your heart will be sealed. You will not understand the reality. That's what killed the munafiqeen. Say, نخشى أن تصيبنا دائرة. We are afraid that the situation will turn against us. That's what makes them munafiqeen. Otherwise, they believe they embraced Islam, but they are not willing to stand firm. We have to be bullied by the kuffar. We have to accept. We have to submit. We have to surrender. We have to keep relation. We have to keep a bridge open. In matter of creed and ideology and war and peace, not in matter of business and so on. Business, no problem. Can't be open the bridge, close the bridge. Who cares? That's not. You have to make it. You have to decide: is this issue an issue of fundamental importance, issue of life and death, including dunya and akhirah, or not? If it's a secondary issue, matter where gaining more money or less money, or a better transaction, or a better business, or this kind of trade I master better than the other one, this is a trivial issue. That's not important. It's not worth fighting for in the first place. Issue the trade which brings you more money, that's fine. As long as halal, no problem. Choose from the halals. That's not the issue. What we're talking about, if you think that's fundamental and you're required and you'll be questioned Yawm al-Qiyamah, then you have to take a stand.
So in this instance,
all this bullying soon will evaporate. Will work nothing.
So in this instance, the nifaq is because they've stepped over the line of allegiance and hostility.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah, Shaykh. I will encourage everyone to watch the video because I hope at the very least you've got some perspective from us as well, but also Sami Hamdi is well worth listening.
Concerning the regimes in the Muslim countries generally, with few exceptions, with evidence that they are exceptions, assume they are either traitor or cowards, and they're good for nothing, and they are mafias in form of governments until they prove otherwise with their action. That's it. Then you are safe. Yeah. And you don't put any hope on them, and you will work into unseating them and educating the people about them.
Also, this is an important one. Whereas you have a lot of guests who talk about issues around political analysis, what's different about our channel is the fact that we're unequivocal about certain things, issues of governance. So these rulers are not valid. So the professor has a work, for example, on the issue of removing the rulers. The famous narration which the professor has qualified as being tawatur, which is the Immat al-Quraysh, and 3 criteria: if they don't fulfill it, extermination. So this lie. So recently we have the Trojan horse of Al Saud, Rabi al-Madkhali, died, and he was a proponent of the weaponized lie, the deceit about complete subservience to rulers. Know this, know this, know this. The stronger point of view is about the rulers having zero legitimacy, and their removal is warranted. How you do it is a different issue in terms of tactics. But fundamentally,
there are various procedures also clarified by Sharia in various places. It can be put in one place. For example, in our book, Accounting the Rulers, there are the various issues of the hadith and so on are there. And we have the old version. We don't have even this hadith about time of Quraysh, either Hakam or Adal, etc. We did not. We will have to edit and improve on it and reorganize it to make it more structured. And then show how to deal with certain situation, how to refer to a constitutional court. If there's no court, how to establish a court. And if the ruler refuses establishing a court, he's rebelling against Sharia and then he has to be fought, etc. It's explained there in details.
So the whole purpose of this is not just to have an analysis.
It's not a strong point of view, it's a qat'i. If you take all evidence and put them together, they will give you a general scheme of qat'i. That's it, without any doubt. So this is what Madkhali and so on said is essentially a statement of kufr. Was he a kafir or was he extremely ignorant? I leave that for the people to judge. I don't care about that. But the statement itself, that you have to submit to a ruler unconditionally, even if they commit crimes, if they are violate the Sharia, this is definitely a statement of kufr.
And the other thing that's also, they're still unequivocal about spying agencies, being part of them, all this stuff. So what you see on our channel is not just analysis, which is every week we do.
No, analysis is secondary. Analysis just
it's about returning people back to the fundamentals of the text.
Yeah,
going in detail. I mean, at the very least, we hope we've impressed upon you some of the analysis
of statecraft, how Islamic statecraft works.
None of this rubbish morality stuff where you sanitize things or you use real politique. This is not the message that our Prophet ﷺ brought.
Which has received many, even Hizb Tahrir, for example. Shaykh Taqi did do some advancement there, but he got stuck. Still, he believes that morality is representing something which you could regard as Islamic in general. Essentially, it may be just in the far border of Islam, but it clearly contains fundamental errors and blunders. Definitely.
So, as always, anyone prominent being mentioned here, our doors are always open. We hope you enjoyed this session. We didn't go through the entire video because it's quite long, and
it's the same logic is behind. We discussed the main things in the introduction. Anyway,
I mean, we'll link the video. I mean, it's always a pleasure listening to Sami. Alhamdulillah, it's inspiring. It's motivational. He puts a lot of context to things. So we'll leave that to you to go through the whole video. But inshallah, do propagate this message, inshallah, and many more videos to come. And we hope to really be a thorn in the side of nefarious regimes everywhere, inshallah.
Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وآل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.